was insane because everybody in the room was singing I Refuse. And it hadn't even come out.
And we're on. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Last Week Liquid podcast. Today I have the immense pleasure and honor to be sitting down with Tony, better known as London Elektricity. Tony will need absolutely no introductions for most of you out there, but on the off chance the name doesn't ring a bell, Tony is a drum and bass producer and DJ, co-founder and CEO of Hospital Records, host of the award-winning Hospital podcast. However, with this year marking the 25-year anniversary of Hospital, Tony announced that what was, in his own words, his biggest decision since he was 8 when he gave up learning the piano, which was to step away from Hospital. You can catch his newest venture, The Thinkcast, a podcast focused on the freshest drum and bass, as well as interviews and discussions with a variety of guests, out now on all platforms. Tony, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm doing great. Yeah, doing really, really well. A bit hot. My studio's in the attic, and being British, I don't have air conditioning, obviously. So it's very sweaty.
Yeah, I can see the roof just behind you. I can imagine how hot it can get. Yeah,
yeah. You can see the sloping walls there. But you know, it works. Sounds good in here, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, good stuff. So I was telling you before we started recording. I'll say it again once now, and then I'll stop fanboying. But huge thanks for coming on this show. Really appreciate it. I've talked about Hospital a ton of times in the past, and especially Netsky, who me as a Belgian was a huge influence on me discovering drum and bass. So I'd love to get into a bit of that later on. But yeah, huge thanks to you for coming on the show.
Well, I'm very, very grateful to be invited, actually. So thanks for having me.
So while we were chatting on Instagram, you told me you were at a pivotal point in your creative career. That's how you kind of put it. What's kind of your state of mind like today? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good these days. I mean, I've learned how to be serene for the first time in my life. People who knew me before, they know that I was always a bit of a tortured soul, and kind of very hardworking, a lot of inspiration, but never content. And I used to see that as a strength because it drove me forward and enabled me to drive Hospital Records forward and my career forward and everything. So I was constantly trying to get better, be better. But I honestly think as I've turned 60 this year, I'm entitled to, I hate that word, entitled.
You can use it.
Let's not use that word. I think it's the right time for me to just kind of live in the moment, really.
Yeah.
And stop pushing. I don't need to push anymore. You know? So I'm stepping forward from Hospital Records, and I'm immensely proud of Hospital. But I know that for me, I need something quite different.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely get into that. Maybe a bit of the early days of Hospital, even though you've talked about it a lot, but maybe a bit more of your recent decision, how you came to it and things like that. Before we get into all that music, Hospital stuff, you're the first guest I have on this show who was born in the 60s. So I do have to ask you, do you have any memories of the Beatles?
Yeah, I didn't like them.
Jesus. Okay, that's the end.
Like the
Goodbye. Thank you.
No, I didn't. My oldest sister did, but I thought they were rubbish. I really did. I was because I only became musically aware at the turn of the 70s.
Yeah.
And going into the early 70s, and I was much more into like Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, the more kind of like heavy rock side. And I thought the Beatles were just like pop idiots.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Did you ever come around to the Beatles, or
No. And I'll tell you why. Because, you know, sometimes there's a singer and however hard you try, their voice just makes you.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
Paul McCartney is that singer.
Oh, really?
I can't stand his voice.
It's too poppy. Or
It's. I mean, I love some pop singers. You know, there are some brilliant pop singers. Don't get me wrong, but not him.
So not even the John Lennon songs, or
they're better. I can listen to John Lennon's voice a lot more easily. And yeah, his later stuff with the Beatles, I can appreciate a lot more. But I mean, like Paul McCartney showed his hand when he did the Frog song.
I forget about that one.
Yeah, it was like a horrible novelty song about frogs on lily pads, and that was in the late 70s.
Yeah.
So, and then like Ebony and Ivory. I mean, you know, he has made some unforgivable tunes.
Yeah, but he's made like the best tunes in the world ever as well. So it's like, yeah.
Well, You Didn't Let Die is good by Wings.
Yeah.
And there is a really good drum and bass bootleg of that. I don't know if you know about it.
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. You can't get it digitally, I don't think.
Okay, I haven't heard it.
You can probably get it on a legal file sharing site or something. You know. Yeah.
But so nothing off Abbey Road, and then we'll close the Beatles, but no, just doesn't do it for you.
No. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I was just hoping to create a connection with that one person who might have remembered the Beatles while they were still together, but...
Oh, I remember them, yeah. I just remember not liking them.
Yeah, well, to be fair, like the first time I heard, I don't know when it was, like for a long time I only heard of like Let It Be and the very big tunes, and never really did anything for me. And then I kind of went back and listened to their albums like one after the other, and just like sparked something in me. And that was quite
I mean, when I was 5, I did like Bang Bang Maxwell Silver Hammer.
Yeah.
And
That's
the Yellow
Abbey Road, yeah.
Because they're really good tunes for a 5-year-old. You know, they're like kids' tunes.
Yeah, no, a few are. Yeah, a few are. Yeah, no, definitely.
Sorry, I won't tear into the Beatles.
Sorry. No, it's fine. It's fine. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, and they've become such a like bigger than anything else on the planet. A lot of people kind of then rebel against that, and I don't know, but yeah, I love the Beatles. So before we jump into hospital per se, and your decision to step back, I had Winslow on the show. He'll be it was a previous episode actually. So we had a great chat about he had just announced he's signing to hospital. So yeah, can you walk me just a bit through the process of kind of discovering him, your decision to bring him on board, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it was last year I discovered him thanks to Mike Kiss and Johnny's label Goldfat. And I can't remember if it was on Full Fat or... Anyway, it was through Johnny. He released it was an EP by Duncan Winslow. And I was blown away. I was really, really blown away. And he was my last signing at Hospital Records. Because there have been certain artists who've come along where I've just insisted that we sign them, like Etherwood and Deggs and Keno. And yeah, Winslow was definitely one of those. You know, I think I could tell just from, it's not only about the music, it's about who he is. And I think he's got a really, really brilliant persona. And it's not put on, it's him.
Yeah, definitely.
100% honest. He is very, very understated. And he's got this lovely kind of kind demeanor with a sort of underscore of very, very dry sense of humor, quite a dark sense of humor underneath, you know.
Very British in that sense.
It is actually. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. And he likes tea. But he's not a wannabe British person.
No, definitely not. No.
I don't think anyone wants to be British. No. We just embarrassed ourselves in front of the whole world over the last 4 years. But yeah, Winslow he's just like his latest release, gorgeous. You know, he's got so much more to develop and come, I think, you know. Yeah,
So,
really
so what's kind of the general, so obviously it's more than just the music. What are the kind of things you look at before you kind of decide to approach an artist and say, we'd like you to come on board?
Well, it's 100% the music, actually.
Okay.
I mean, apart from if the music's good and the person's a complete nightmare, and because when you're in a record label, if you're going to do a good job with an artist, then you're going to be working a lot with that person, and you want to be able to enjoy working with that person. It's really, really important. And not everyone we've signed over the years has been enjoyable to work with, because you can't get it perfect all the time, especially across 25 years with so many artists. But nearly all of them have. They've been really, really good people, really nice people. And that's just important on a day-to-day level. So without amazing music, we wouldn't sign anybody, no matter how nice they are. But with amazing music, they still have to be kind of like, they can be quirky, they can be weird, they can be difficult sometimes because they're artists. They can be all of these things that every artist is at times. But if they're not prepared to listen and grow and kind of like collaborate, then it's not going to work, you know, because we're a very collaborative label.
Yeah. And I guess you do want some like artists that have their own like vision of what they want to achieve as well, not just like be, okay, I'm on hospital now, I'm just sending tunes and that's it. Like you want them to bring something more to the table as well, I guess.
Well, we do. And one of the things that we look for is an artist who is different from any artist that we've signed before. We don't like artists who try and make music for hospital, because you can tell instantly, and it sounds unoriginal. It sounds like something we've already released or one of our artists. You know, so we're not that kind of label. There are labels like that, but that's not us, because hospital only exists as it is because of the sum total of all the music that we've released. And each new artist helps to shape the label. So it's not a conservative outlook at all. It's more like, right, who can stretch our sound and everything and take us on the journey and take followers on the journey with them, you know. And then in terms of A&R, the job is to help them be the best version of themselves, not to help them to fit a mold. It's quite the opposite.
No, definitely. I could name like 5 different artists on hospital who have like seemingly nothing in common in terms of like their music. If you were to compare, I don't know, like Metric to Winslow, for example, or Madkiss or Etherwood, or it's like they don't have Spy,
Bop. I mean, they're all
Bop, exactly.
Incredibly different.
It's almost like you're taking like a new risk every time, I guess, with an artist, especially.
Really important to do that. Otherwise, it goes stale so quickly. There are labels who just seem to, they sign the artist, but the music kind of sounds the same. That to me is stale. Maybe I think some people do like that, but it's boredom for me. It really is.
And so through like 25 years at hospital, how did you manage to keep that like fresh perspective on the music and not just be bored of drum and bass like as a genre? Like how do you manage to still find
Never. I never got bored of it, ever, not once. And I've always thought, and I still think, that drum and bass it's by far the most eclectic genre of dance music, because you can make a drum and bass tune. If you think of drum and bass as a structural framework, in terms of tempo. Within that, you can incorporate almost any emotion and just, any era of music history, if you like, in a drum and bass framework. And it's fantastic in that way. And the reason you can do that is because it operates at two totally different tempos at the same time. It operates at a fast tempo, 170, 174, whatever, and it operates at half that.
Yeah.
So 85 BPM, which is more like hip hop, slow funk, or there's loads of classical and jazz at that tempo. And this came about by sampling and adding fast beats over the samples. But it's, when you're writing, it's the same. You can write in that kind of flavor, that half tempo flavor, and then you can build a drum and bass tune around it. And it's you see it on the dance floor. Some people dance at 170 BPM.
Yeah.
Some people dance at 85 BPM. It's usually, I've always found it's usually men who dance quickly.
That's funny.
Women tend to dance the kind of slow tempo to the bass.
That's funny. I think I never thought about this. I think I'm more of the grooving, so I would be more on the 80, 87, whatever tempo. But you can definitely see people dancing with their feet, skipping all over the place, and that's the 170 area.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I find myself sometimes just headbanging at 170, because
that's probably dangerous, but yeah.
I've got a titanium neck, maybe that's why.
Okay. Yeah. Talking about signing artists and all of that. So I mentioned Netsky, and I do want to touch on that because I've mentioned him on many of these episodes in the past. I'm from Belgium, and when that first album dropped in 2010, huge in Belgium, huge for me, discovering what drum and bass actually was. Didn't really know what it was as a genre before. So yeah, huge impact on me and what I'm doing today within drum and bass, largely due to that first album. Do you remember how much you remember of discovering Netsky, bringing him on board, that first album?
I remember everything about it. I remember it was when Tomahawk was part of the crew. Me, Tomahawk, and Chris Goss. We were the A&R and running the label. And I remember it, October 2009. We'd gone through demos for the year, and the process was to kind of flag up interesting talent, keep an eye on them, have a little chat with them, maybe suggest a few improvements, see how they respond to that. If they respond well to it and they're clearly kind of building and improving, then we think about, we pull their tunes into the studio, and all three of us listen to them and discuss, do we want to sign this artist to this artist? And there was Subwave and Netsky, and we wanted to sign both of them. We weren't able to sign Subwave in the end, but we signed Boris, and he just had a release out on Players, and he had a release just about to come out on Spearhead, I Refuse.
Yeah.
So that came out after we signed him, and he came over to do a little gig at the Village Underground, probably about 400 capacity. And we literally just signed him. So he came over to sign the contract and just get to know us a bit. And we actually didn't know what a buzz there was on him already when we signed him. And at that gig, it was insane because everybody in the room was singing I Refuse. And it hadn't even come out. Everybody was singing it. And we just knew, wow, yeah, Boris he's got a connection with people. He really has. So I remember just turning around to Chris and Tom, just saying, look, we need Boris to make an album really quickly. So I said that to Boris, and he was like, whoa. I said, look, trust me, this is the thing. We need to release it at the end of May, and you've got to deliver it by the end of March. So you've got to deliver it in sort of 3 months.
That's insane.
And he had a load of tunes that he'd made, which he'd sent us, some of which ended up on the album. He dug deeper because we said, look, what else have you got? And he said, oh, well, I've got these tunes, but this one particularly is really, really weird, and I don't really want to send it to you. And I, come on, just send it. So he sent us Ironheart. And he thought it was too strange.
It is strange.
He didn't want us to hear it. It's a brilliant tune.
Yeah.
It's out there, but it's in there at the same time. And he worked really, really hard on the first album very quickly. And because he wasn't known, he didn't have a full DJ diary. So it was at that golden point in an artist's career, and it only ever happens once, where there's a buzz, there's an anticipation that the artist hasn't got any gigs yet, which means the artist has got loads of time to be in the studio. And for a label, that is just a dream, because normally an artist is too busy to even focus and concentrate in the studio without you constantly hassling them. But Boris just had the time, and he worked on these sketches. And I think the one that probably took the most work was the track with Darrison.
Yeah, Escape.
Which I recorded in my studio at home, and then sent him the vocals, and he got it together and worked. So I think Leanne Carroll's on that as well, doing backing vocals. But yeah, it was got together really, really quickly. And actually, looking back on it, that album is a classic of the genre. It really is. It is a real Liquid classic.
Yeah.
That first album, there are some amazing moments. Let's Leave Tomorrow with Beverly Harling. That's an incredible tune for me. Boris he was never that keen on that tune, but I absolutely love it. It's gorgeous. So yeah, he came through. It was great, and that was an exciting time. And I think it is still Hospital's best-selling album ever.
Oh wow, I had no idea. It's I just brought it up because it's obviously my favorite. But yeah, no, that's amazing. How did the collaboration evolve after that? Because he released his second album with you, but then I think he left Hospital for Sony, I think.
Yep.
But then he came back last year. So tell me a bit about that journey.
Well, all artists have their own journey, and it doesn't necessarily fit with the label they start on. And because of Boris's meteoric success and his just appetite for doing something different, he didn't want to just keep doing the same. And you can hear it in his second album that there's more of a leaning towards kind of EDM, which was just kicking off then. Yeah. And he became, as a DJ, he just went stratospheric very, very quickly. And suddenly he was like in the private jet arena. He was kind of like sharing private jets with Steve Aoki and, all of these guys who, I think all of whom were just saying, what the fuck are you doing on a tiny little label in London, man?
Yeah.
He got management. He started to build a kind of a pot of tunes for his third album. And they were so far away from what I wanted to release, because they were very kind of pop EDM, well made, but not suitable for us, and basically not drum and bass. So And at the same time, he got a manager and he was talking to major labels, and they just announced that he's going to sign to Sony. So we sort of negotiated how that was going to work. And for a little while, he rejected drum and bass.
Yeah.
And I think he got so much kind of sadness from his fans about that. So when he contacted us and said, look, I want to do another drum and bass album on Hospital again, it was great. So our door's always open if the music's good. We weren't sure if it was going to be good, but he sent through loads of really good sketches. And true to his word, he put together a really, really nice drum and bass album. And we've gone through a lot of learning stages as a label. And for a little while, when our long-term artists, people like High Contrast, Come On Crooked, Netsky, when they decided they wanted to leave, we found it very difficult at first, because you assume that you're on a journey forever, and that artists are going to want to be on a journey forever as well, and you've invested everything in them and their career and their music. So it can feel almost like quite a personal thing when they say, well, I'm going to go and sign to a major or whatever. But two of those three have come back. Come On Cricket came back. Boris came back. And that wasn't us asking them to come back. We have to let people go off and do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And if they really enjoy that and that satisfies them, that's great. Because this is about people and it's about music. It's not about contracts and so forth.
Yeah, no,
if they then want to come back because they realise actually the best home for their drum and bass is hospital, that's even better.
Yeah.
It really is. It's very satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah, because in a way he could have put out the album on Sony or like wherever. Like I don't think they would have said like no or anything.
No, he could have put it out on 3Beat or BMG. I mean, but I think he wanted to reconnect with his core fans. Really.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. Now I see what you mean. I was kind of making a parallel in my mind, like with like a football club or something, where you're like, you bring up this young talent and he's like exploding, and then he gets transferred to Barcelona or whatever, and it's like, oh wait, I thought we were doing this together or something.
It's exactly like that. It really is, and we've got used to it, and we've got used to the fact that actually it's a sign of our success working with that artist that they're in demand from other labels, and from major labels. I mean, I'm personally not much of a fan of major labels, but I know that. I mean, I remember wanting to release my music on majors years ago, like in the 80s. So I know how that feels, and it's kind of something that you need to go there and try it out, see how it feels,
Yeah. Okay, that was my Netsky chapter. I want to make sure we covered it. So yeah, hospital 25 years later. You talked about it in a few other podcasts, but decision to step down later this year. Tell me a bit how you came to that conclusion.
It was quite long, actually, because having kind of invested absolutely everything, all my time, my energy, my inspiration into hospital, and kind of weaponized all of my ridiculously crazy ideas for the label. And it's kind of built on that foundation. I always assumed that it was going to be like that forever. But what I didn't bargain for was the success of the label. When a business is successful, it grows. You can't have a successful business and try and stop it from growing. And the effect that had on me was I knew the company was growing. I sort of knew that I was a bit happier before when it was smaller. But I thought, oh, it'll be right. It'll be fine. But as it grew and grew, I became less and less happy and more unhappy. And that's got nothing to do with the artists or the staff. It's just that if you're the figurehead of a business and that business grows to a certain size, suddenly it changes and it becomes corporate with a multi-layered management structure. Suddenly you have to abide by all of these employment rules, these business rules like GDPR, and kind of like it became exactly the thing that I rebelled against when I first went into the music industry. And I did not want to become a suit, as we call them. So for me, it's always been about creativity, about music and people. It has never been about industry and corporate governance and, not about that for me. So I only realized last year that I was just too unhappy to stay. And the company is great. It's doing really well. Brilliant staff team and great body of artists. And I feel very good about that, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to go. I wouldn't be able to step forward from it if I felt that me stepping forward would be a threat to the company. But it's not, because I've actually delegated everything that I was doing. The only thing that hospital's not going to have is my ears and my crazy ideas. But it's got everything else.
So I heard you say on another podcast that you were feeling this like unhappiness for quite a few years, like maybe going back to 2017, 2018 already. And I know it's something that a lot of people might go through at some point in their life of feeling unhappy, but really putting your finger on what is causing that unhappiness can be really hard.
Yeah.
So like in your case, like how did you manage to like put your finger on, okay, it's hospital, it's this that's causing this unhappiness? Because from the outside, it's like, what else would you want?
Well, I know, and that was what made it so difficult, because I've always known, like, as hospital became successful, I've always known that my job is probably the best job in drum and bass in many ways. And how could I possibly not be ecstatically happy all the time, having the best job in drum and bass? And for many years, I was genuinely blown away by what had happened as a result of kind of like my crazy ideas, the incredible hard work of the team, of Chris Goss and everybody who believed in the vision, believed in my vision and made it happen. It worked, the plan came together and it worked. So it was fantastic. But like I said, when suddenly, or it felt suddenly, it wasn't, it was gradually, when it becomes so big that there is no room for crazy ideas anymore, because the crazy idea will just rattle around in this huge room and kind of like beat itself against the walls. You can't shape the company on crazy ideas anymore when it's a certain size. So it took me a long time to realize this is actually what was making me happy, making me unhappy, because it's a dream job, Yeah. How could it?
Yeah. Was there also an aspect of not being able to dedicate enough time to like music, for example, and things like that you started off doing?
Actually, no, funnily enough, because everyone at the label has always been more than accommodating when I've gone into an album phase. So And with the last album I made on Hospital, Building Better Worlds, I was very, very happy in the studio. And I didn't feel pressurized to not do it, to not make it. And I needed to make it, and I did. And I was very, very pleased with it. And I am now, very proud of that album. So, no, I think everyone in the label always knew that it was an important part of the label that I would be making albums and making quite eclectic original drum and bass albums, because that's it's a kind of signifier of the Hospital's intent, really.
Mm. Yeah. Just talking about that album, if I'm not mistaken, that's the one with your son singing.
Yeah.
One of the tracks. Tell me how that came about.
Well, it came about because while I was in the kind of early stages of writing the album, I took the Secretary General to his swimming class, and we had Inja's album on the car stereo, and he just started. He just rapped over it verbatim perfectly, and I'd never heard him do this before, and I was shocked, And I was driving along, doing that thing where you drive along and put a video with your iPhone,
Yeah.
Do that, but I did. And I sent it to Inja, and he was like, "What? It's amazing." He was 9 then, 9 years old. So the lady culminator had an idea, and she said, "Well, why don't you ask Inja if he'll write a tune for Stanley," which is the Secretary General's real name. So I asked Inja, and he was like, "Yeah." And he came down at half term. I think it was like February 2019. He came down with his daughter, who's the same age. And we'd already worked out the title because I did a little practice the day before with Stan in the studio, because he'd never recorded on a mic with headphones before,
Okay.
So I did a little practice. And I just said, "Look, this is the backing track, get the level right and get used to the microphone. And just like, we'll record you, just say whatever you want." So I recorded it, and he just kind of went, "I just need time to think. I can't think of what to say," which ended up being the beginning of the record.
Yeah.
And that was the title, Time to Think. So I sent that bit to Inja, and he was like, "Yeah, brilliant." And he came down, and we just wrote it in here, me and Inj, while Stan and Inja's daughter played in the garden. And after about an hour, we called them up, and it was really quite something, because Inja laid a guide down, which we actually used in the track, and Stanley listened to it once, and he had the lyrics, and we went in, and he nailed it on the second take.
That's amazing.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Really crazy. And the funny thing is that he's not really interested in doing it anymore.
That's really interesting. You'd think that like with his name on Spotify and all of that, showing his friends or whatever, he'd want to do more of it.
Maybe he will. He's taken up the trumpet, and he's absolutely smashing it on the trumpet. He's doing really, really well. So I keep telling him that, look, if you get your MCing going, you would be the only MC who's a brilliant trumpet player as well. And people would go crazy in the dance.
Yeah.
They really would. So we'll see. No pressure.
Yeah. That's a really cool story. I love those stories of like family members jumping on to like record some guitar, vocals, whatever. Brings a unique flavor to tracks when you know the backstory. Yeah,
and I had to make really sure that it wasn't going to make people cringe.
Yeah.
Because that is a danger. When you get your kid on the track, you lose all objectivity.
Yeah.
So I played it to loads and loads of people, and everyone was like, "Whoa, that is good." And sure enough, that year at Glastonbury, like, we were all there, and he walked on stage. Degs introduced him. We did the tune, killed it, absolutely killed it.
No nerves, nothing.
He was nervous, but he held it together. He's got that ability to stand in front of 3,000 people and deliver.
He's made for it. He just doesn't know it yet.
You got it, yeah.
I love that story. So when you look back at hospital 25 years, obviously starting from like pretty much nothing. I think you said you didn't even know how to make drum and bass when you started the label. What you kind of pinpoint the success of hospital to? Like, are there 2-3 things you could point to that really made what hospital is today?
There are. It's a combination of grind, hard work, but having fun while you work hard. That with an original vision. And my philosophy all the way through was be unlike anyone else and never do things the same as other people. And that applied to the music, that applied to the look, you know, the splash that we made with the early packaging and the philosophy of the label. Do albums from day one. That was crucial. The most important thing of all was because I'm an artist and I've been on the receiving end of deals with labels who don't pay. The most important thing of all for me was artists get paid first. They get paid absolutely everything. And if there's something left, then, because at the time it was just me and Chris doing it, if there's something left, then we get it. And that philosophy stuck because I instinctively knew that apart from it being morally right, I also knew that almost every other drum and bass label at the time didn't pay their artists. And if we could make it work, then it would be a really big thing because it would build trust and word would spread. And it worked. So all these things worked. The name hospital worked because we didn't know at the time, but it's an international word and people know it all over the world.
Except in Germany. I saw your meme.
Krankenhaus. We had a residency in Watergate in Berlin around 2003, 2004. And for them to sell at hospitality and at that venue, we actually made Krankenhaus t-shirts.
Ah, that's amazing.
I know. I'm afraid I haven't got mine anymore.
That's one of the crazy ideas you had.
We did Krankenhaus t-shirts in 2003.
Is that like one of the ideas that wouldn't fly today in the boardroom?
No, it probably wouldn't now. It probably wouldn't fly at the moment, no.
Yeah, but hospital is a great name. I've heard you talk about in the past about how it's like different rooms in a hospital that would kind of reflect the different subgenres or vibes that you were going for with the label.
It had a 3-dimensional feel to it because me and Chris were in the pub like for weeks going through names, and that kept coming back to the top of the list. And it's because it's got kind of endless departments, and hospitals can go on forever and get lost in them. So we kind of knew that, both being lovers of puns, we knew that there was a lot of mileage.
Yeah.
and it turned out to be,
sick music.
Yeah, exactly. Sick music, plastic surgery, weapons of mass creation.
Yeah. I actually just made the link now with the event you have in September, Sonic Surgery. I only just made the link now that it's the hospital universe. I just hadn't made the link before.
Yeah. And our publishing wing is called Songs in the Key of Night.
Yeah.
Because both Chris and I love Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder. And the knife is the surgeon's knife.
Yeah. Yeah. You've also said that like it wasn't really planned from the start. Like you didn't have like this grandiose vision 25 years down the road of what it would become, and that it was more of a a series of like risks that you took one after the other that kind of culminated into what it is today.
Yeah.
What were like some of the big risks that you took that paid off, and maybe a few that didn't quite pay off as well as you expected?
It's funny you should use the word expected, because I've tried very hard to never expect anything.
Yeah, that's your episode 2 of your expectations. So
yeah, which actually I'm putting together now. But I've always been conscious of that, not to actually expect anything and not to feel like you're entitled to anything. But I mean, certainly the big risks that paid off, and I'll get to ones that didn't pay off if I can. The ones that paid off were things like starting our own event. And even when we started it quite small, at Herbal in Hoxton, which is like a sort of one up, one down club, about 350 capacity. We were really nervous because it was Friday night and nobody did a drum and bass night on a Friday or Saturday that was liquid, because liquid was like a room 3 genre, you know, because in room 1 you'd have like, I guess what then was known as sort of hard step, and in room 2 you might have jump up. You know, and poor old liquid would be in a kind of shitty bar area or something
with some sofas and
So we thought, well, let's just do this. We did it, and it was brilliant. We rammed it out every month for 3 years, I think, and it was a real homegrown affair. It was like me, my wife, the lady culminator, Chris, Tomahawk. I mean, we would do everything. You know, we would take it in turns to be on the till. We'd take it in turns to do the guest list. And I'd be doing the till or the guest list, and it was my time to play. And I just kind of like quickly find someone else to take it over and run to the decks and do my set, and then go back on the door, you know, and we'd rig it. We'd put all the kind of banners up, and we'd do the flyering ourselves. So we fly around movement, bar rumba, the ends, you know, Fabian Groove Rider. We do all of the kind of like the really quality nights, and we'd be there flying because we couldn't afford to pay the company to do it for us. And it really was like that. It was hand to mouth in those days. But that went really well. And then, as most clubs do, they sort of lose their shine. You know, and Herbal started to lose its shine, and we knew we needed another home. And there's sometimes a kind of like serendipity of events where things fall into place at the right time. And someone we knew got a job at Heaven, and Heaven wanted to kind of broaden what they were doing. So they offered us a night, you know, at Heaven. And we were like, whoa, Heaven. This is crazy. And our agent, Tom Schroeder, he just said, you're crazy. You are nuts. You're going to lose so much money doing this. And I remember on the very, very first hospitality at Heaven, which was sold out, and there were queues around the block, and standing on stage with Chris and with our agent, Tom, just looking at him. And he was just like, okay, I was wrong. It was packed. It was brilliant. The atmosphere was insane. And again, it was all liquid in room 1. It was all us lot. It was me, there was Lincoln, there was Dan Newton, there was Logistics. We were all there. And those gigs were brilliant. You know, but it's a risk. You've got to take a risk sometimes to kind of like to move forwards. You know, if you don't, it's boring. You don't take risks. It's really, really boring. A risk that we took that was an absolute disaster was in 2007. Heaven opened a club in Ibiza, and they asked us to go and do hospitality. But as it turned out, we had to take all the risks. So we had to pay for the artists. We had to pay for the hotel and the flights. looking back at it, I got no idea why we accepted the offer, but we were just green. We were completely naive.
Yeah. It's not
And
exactly the home of drum and bass.
no, and there was this guy who was like the boots on the ground called Steve. He hadn't started his Spearhead label yet.
Oh, okay.
He was the boots on the ground, kind of like the artist liaison, if you like, for the club. And it was a disaster. There was almost no one there. And I know that Heaven's Club tanked. It completely tanked. You know, it wasn't, I think we naively thought it was part of the scene. You know, it was one of the clubs that people went to. And it wasn't at all. Although it was in London, it wasn't in Ibiza.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we lost a lot of money on that night.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I can imagine it's hard to have a sense of what the scene is like when you're not there yourself. Like in London, the UK, you have a very good sense of the cities and the clubs within the cities and all of that.
And I mean, now in Ibiza, there aren't actual drum and bass nights, but there are regular gigs for the kind of pop drum and bass superstars, you know, on a kind of a bass lineup.
Yeah. You talked also about your move to iTunes, that was quite early as well within the industry. Did you see that as a risk at the time to move towards digital?
Well, I saw it as a risk not to do it. And this was like 2002, when there was no drum and bass at all on iTunes, and it was just starting up really. But I could see plain and simple that this was absolutely going to fly. And from a business perspective for a label, what a dream to get paid for something that you're not manufacturing. Oh, it's hot in here.
No worries.
So, I managed to kind of ensure that we built a relationship with Apple, and we got on there. And we didn't know if it was going to be a success. It wasn't really a risk because it didn't cost us anything to get on there. I guess if it had failed, it would have cost us our credibility or something. But for a good year and a half, we were the only drum and bass label on iTunes. So the staff at Apple loved us. You know, they really did. And our releases from then until before iTunes started to die off did really, really well. You know, we collaborated very, very well with Apple on that. So, we're a bit slow with Spotify, but we nonetheless got on there and built a very good relationship with them. And it's important. You have to. You can kind of fight spiritually against new technology and new ways of doing things, but actually you have to be there at the front. You really do.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on the NFTs? That was a question from one of my audience. Pendulum just launched a NFT. I don't know if you saw.
Who has?
It's Pendulum.
Yeah, no, I did. I mean, I haven't been interested in NFTs. I guess I'm still seeing what happens to them because it just feels like a gimmick. You know, and I don't know if it's. I don't know how it works. I don't even know how it works legally in terms of rights. You know, if you write a piece of music and record it as an NFT, does that mean that the person who buys the NFT can do whatever they want with that music? Can they then go and release it? You know, if it's theirs? I don't know. So I don't really know.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be a good thing to do. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm still definitely on the fence about it. I read quite a lot about it, and I had somebody on the show who launched his own platform to be able to mint NFTs. And yeah, I think basically you can do pretty much what you want with them. So it depends kind of how you, it's like a contract, like you can configure it to give some part of royalties or no royalties at all, or things like that.
see. Yeah. I mean, I guess at the moment, I still consider it to be slightly desperate and a bit of a gimmick.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you know, if I'm proven wrong, then fair enough.
Yeah. As I always say, the market will
Maybe
decide.
it's the future of releasing music. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe it is. I
I
think
don't know. It doesn't seem democratic to me. Put it that way.
In what sense?
It's so completely exclusive because only one person can have that tune.
Yeah. But yeah.
So it's only for the wealthy.
Yeah. But
To
I
me,
think
that goes against it. Everything.
I think there's a lot of like NFTs that can be, for example, they can still be on streaming, for example, but then you sell like 10 unique versions of like the digital sleeve, for example, and then like your 10 biggest fans can bid for that. So I kind of see it as like an extra way to build connections with fans, like diehard fans.
Yeah, I can see that. It's a bit like buying bespoke skins in a game, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't really get because I'm not a gamer at all, but I can see like the generation behind me, they're totally into that. They'll spend like hundreds of dollars on skins in games, like maybe your kids do. I don't know. But
well, they're not allowed to, but they would.
Yeah,
they would if they were allowed to. Like Fortnite is a free game, but all the money's made on skins, you know.
Yeah.
And exclusive weapons.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be that generation that will decide if it makes any sense or not.
Yeah,
I feel.
it will. You're right.
Yeah. So when you kind of look at before getting to your future per se, if you look at the future of labels in general now, with like your experience, where do you see the future of labels going, the role of labels? Because we've seen a lot of, maybe more in hip hop, but artists starting to like just self-release their stuff as well directly to fans and things like that. Where do you see the future of labels?
Well, yeah, that's happened in drum and bass quite a lot over the last few years. And there's a lot of drum and bass artists who they've left Ram or Shogun or Hospital and set up their own labels. Spy has started his own label, Dark Matter. He's also signed a new contract with Hospital. And he's working so hard at it, and he's realizing how hard work it is. Because it's kind of easy to think, oh yeah, I'm just gonna do my own label now and I'll have a Bandcamp and I'll get all the money. But nothing will happen because you have to put so much work into sticking it under people's noses, getting them to notice it, you know, getting them to even realize it exists, let alone whether they like it or not. So, and that's where a good label comes in, because a good label will do that and do it effectively. I think the advantage of a really high quality label like Hospital or like say Ninja Tune or Warp, you know, to look at different genres, is that the label actually has its own fan base, as well as an incredibly skillful staff team who built up gradually. So as an artist, you can tap into all of that, and it really can give you a leg up. Especially, I mean, not at the moment with COVID, but if COVID ever becomes manageable, then there will be events again. And we're the leading promoter in drum and bass, so that's also there for our kind of ecosystem of artists and so forth, if they choose to DJ, you know, or play live. So there's a lot of advantages, but there's also advantages to doing it yourself if you do it properly. And doing it properly is basically what me and Chris did in the beginning with Hospital. Do it properly. and don't hide from any of the work that you have to do. You've got to do it all. When you start your label, you've got to do everything. If it's just your music, it's easier. But if you're releasing music by other people, you can then get into the whole world of copyrights, contracts, royalty accounting, and you have to do all that properly. Otherwise, it will come back and bite you in the arse later.
Would that be your? Because definitely in the liquid world, which is like the one I'm most familiar with, it seems like there's new labels popping up left and right quite often. What would be like your big tips for those people kind of starting those like very early stages labels?
Well, I think first of all, it's, do you want to have a label or do you want to have an outlet for your music? So two things are very different. If you've got the ambition to have a label, then you need to prepare yourself to learn everything about it and learn what's involved in signing other artists and developing them and paying them, accounting them, all of that. If it's an outlet for your music, it's a lot easier because really all you have to do is deal with a digital aggregator who'll get your music onto iTunes and Spotify, etc. And you set up your Bandcamp or your Bandzoogle or whatever it is, and you just kind of like dig away and do it yourself, which can work and can be good, especially if you've got a certain profile. Like Carlos Spy, he's got a really good profile, and I expect his label to work for him. I said expect. No pressure, Carlos. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, it's basically you've got to know what you're doing. Are you going to do it as an outlet just for your music, or are you going to do it as a proper label, in which case you're responsible for lots of other people's income and well-being.
Yeah.
So know that before you start it.
Yeah. I think there's also definitely a dimension of, do you want to launch a label to be the guy that runs the label, or do you really want to like push out new music and discover artists? Because I feel maybe sometimes people can get mixed up between the two of those.
Yeah, they can. I mean, there are plenty of labels in drum and bass. I mean, it was almost the norm before Hospital, where actually Moving Shadow is different, but every other label always had a well-known DJ as its figurehead. And that well-known DJ would always be headlining shows put on by that label and would always insist that they were the priority artist all the time. And that has a massive built-in limit on what can be achieved with the label. And I knew that from day one with Hospital. As soon as we started signing other artists, I knew that I had to, at times, just move out of the limelight, put them in the limelight, let them be headlining because it's their album coming out. They're in the cycle. They need the promotion. And that's the way it always went. You know, some shows I'd headline, a lot of shows I wouldn't. And that's a question of managing your ego.
Yeah.
A lot of people in drum and bass couldn't. You know, they couldn't bear the thought that they weren't always the biggest name on the bill.
Yeah.
You know, I was for the most part pretty happy. Sometimes it was a bit difficult, but for the most part,
not gonna lie.
No, not gonna lie.
Yeah. I'm gonna slowly wrap this up. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you, Tony, getting to chat with you. Really grateful for the opportunity. We do have to chat just about your future now, before I let you go. So what do you know first? And if you do know, what does the future hold for you in the coming months, years even? I've mentioned briefly your new podcast, but
my new podcast is called The Thingcast, and it's kind of a development on the Hospital podcast that I used to present. So I think each episode is probably a lot more meaty than the Hospital podcast. It's based around drum and bass that I love. But instead of me having to read out lists of hospitality events and hospital releases of every episode, I can talk about what I want, which is brilliant, because I can go into different sort of topics and subjects and actually get the fans involved, the listeners involved, and talk to other artists and get them involved and have this kind of discourse. So that's the plan. I've got a really exciting release coming out on Hospital at the end of October.
Nice.
Which I won't reveal exactly what it is at the moment, but it's all done and ready. We're just looking at videos at the moment. And in terms of new music, I'm actually in the middle of rebuilding my studio. I almost put it in the garden, but because this gets really hot in the summer, but frankly, I've sort of got the sound sorted in this weird room. I've got it sounding really good, and I don't really want to go through that process again because it's quite long. So I'm just going to change the layout, and I bought loads more synths, and I'm going to kind of, I'm going to have a lot of fun playing with the synths. So I can't wait to get all that sorted. Really, I'm loving just being in the studio and playing in the studio and pottering about, and I couldn't last year or the year before. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't even turn on my studio computer. I was so miserable with it all. Now it's like fantastic. There's no expectation.
Yeah. It's all about expectations.
So a lot of people expect me to start a new label, and at the moment that's the last thing I want to do, because I've just done that for 25 years.
Makes sense.
I don't want to do another one right now. Thank you very much. And there's no rush. I mean, I'll write new music and I'll see. I mean, the idea of releasing on really small labels appeals to me, actually.
Okay.
That really appeals to me. So who knows? We'll see.
That's a call to all the small labels out there. Drop a mail to Tony. He might be the one for his next EP or album. Okay. Well, best of luck with everything. Really happy to hear that. You're in a better place now than a few years back. So really happy for you.
I really am. And I do want to give a shout out to everyone at Hospital Records, because I know that I was pretty unmanageable last year. And sort of thanks for putting up with me, really. It's great. I feel very good, and really excited for the future of drum and bass. And I know that COVID's difficult. There'll probably be another lockdown, and it's awful for people whose livelihood comes from performing. I mean, Brexit as well is devastating for that. So the double whammy of COVID and Brexit is completely unworkable. So my heart goes out to everybody who's starting out in their career and was just getting gigs before lockdown and before Brexit. So, but where there's a will, there's a way. We'll find a way through it.
It's a great note to leave it on. Thanks again for your time, Tony. Really appreciate it. And
I appreciate being asked to
best of luck with everything.
Thank you ever so much.
Cheers.
Okay.